Hello and welcome to Inside Iraq. I'm Jassim Azawi. In a surprise move, Iraqi Vice President Tariq al-Hashimi vetoed a critical part of the recently passed election law, prompting the Election Commission to halt all preparations for next January's election. Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki labelled Hashimi's action unconstitutional and urged Parliament to convene immediately to contain the crisis. The dispute is over percentage of seats in Parliament allocated to Iraqi refugees and internally displaced. As they number in millions, their percentage will empower them to be kingmakers in an unstable parliament. Tariq al-Hashimi gave an exclusive interview to Al Jazeera on the day he vetoed the bill. Here's what he said.
We have to ensure that each 100,000 Iraqi, whether they are living inside or outside Iraq, they should be entertained by one seat. So 7 seats, it doesn't entertain the least figure, the number of Iraqis outside Iraq, as per Ministry of Migration, is 1,500,000. If you are talking on NGOs, international human rights, this figure could reach 4.5 million. So if we are allocating only 7 seats, this means that we are entertaining 700,000 Iraqis and ignoring 800,000. How come that this law is done or respect or geared to the Constitution?
To discuss the implications of al-Hashimi's action and its impact on next January's election, I'm delighted to welcome from Baghdad Mustafa al-Hiti, a member of the Iraqi Parliament from the Iraqi National Movement, and from London, Iraqi affairs experts and political analyst Faridun Hilmi. Gentlemen, welcome to Inside Iraq. Mustafa al-Hiti, let us get the constitutional and the legal aspect out of it. Al-Hashimi is within his constitutional right to veto the bill, either it's in entirety or part of it. So I don't understand why al-Maliki is questioning his privileges as a vice president empowered to do so.
Well, really, Tariq al-Hashimi is doing his job according to the Constitution. And certainly he's one of the Iraqi who should feel, like the others, the right of the Iraqi refugees, whether they are outside Iraq or anywhere. So, you know, all the refugees live under a really very hostile condition abroad because they are not even in the Arab countries, they are legal, what you call it, refugees. So he was doing the right things, and he is with the Constitution, is very really complying with the Constitution, and he's not out of that.
The hue and cry caused by Hashimi's action, Faridun Hilmi, there must be some sort of a political calculus and some political machination behind it. It is not in the interest of most of the current blocs in Iraq for this 4.5 million or maybe 5 million Iraqis to be included in the political process.
Well, that's right. I mean, Hashimi was presiding over the displacement of these millions of people that he is now worried about and crying over. He was in power when they were being driven out of their homes. He didn't do anything to stop that. And now he's in a political jam because the group that he came with to power is no longer supporting him. He is, I believe he's no longer with the Islamic Party that actually put him in his place, and he needs support. And that's why he's now trying to drum up the support from the people who are outside Iraq, the refugees and those people that he's trying to get the vote for. But he's one of the people who were responsible for driving these people out of the country in the first place.
Mustafa al-Hiti, Faridun Hilmi is alluding to something extremely important and very critical, and that is Tariq al-Hashimi, when he was with the Islamic Party, which he's no longer with, he has a new party called the Renewal. His vote at the time to approve the Constitution was absolutely critical. Had he said no, that entire Constitution would have gone nowhere. Is it, in retrospect, he's trying to reclaim something?
Well, really, I mean, we are talking about two things. Upon his responsibility for accepting this Constitution and all the material, and you know that 4 years ago, yes, we can say he is responsible about this constitution. What we are talking now, whether he is complying with the constitution according to this veto or not, this is a different story. Yes, he was responsible for that bad constitution and should be, reformed. I agree with Mr. Freidon about that, but regarding this objection or veto, he is in the right way. And it is not just his idea, by the way. We were talking about this constitution, about the election law a long time ago. I mean, for the last 3 months we were talking, and he had heard certainly the opinion of most blocs, political blocs in the Iraqi parliament, who were objecting to main things regarding the Iraqi Kirkuk and the percentage for the refugees. Although Kirkuk was the main issue, but this issue regarding 10 or 5 or 15% for those seats for the refugees and the quota for other religious parties in Iraq. So in fact, constitutionally he's going right. And today, as I have heard that the Constitutional Court, they were really with al-Hashimi regarding his veto or objection, because it is very clear in the Constitution saying that each seat for a parliament member should be represented by 100,000 Iraqi people. So
if that is the case, if that is the case, Mustafa al-Hiti, let me ask Freidon. We do understand why Hashimi is objecting to the law. Explain to me why the Kurds are objecting to the law. A leading member of the Kurdistan regional government says, we are not going to participate in this election.
The Kurds are taking advantage of this situation, obviously, because they've never been happy about the election law. They are not happy about the way the government is run. They are trying to get maximum advantage out of this whole situation of chaos. It is actually chaos. I mean, it doesn't matter that there's been a government or something called a government for the past 7 years, but to this day, there's a lot of services that are missing. There are many, many very important things that are not being catered for. There are many, many hundreds of very rich contracts being signed away by the so-called politicians today. The wealth of the country is now in the hands of the foreigners and the people who occupied the country.
But Freidon, let us listen to the Kurds, and specifically what they are saying is that the annual growth for Suleimania, Erbil and Hawk does not tally with the rest of the country. The rest of the country, some of it is going to be 3%, 5%, 10%. For instance, Suleimania is stagnant. This is their position. Can you comment on that one, Freidon?
Yes, I mean, I actually wrote a book about the elections, and also in that book there are population growth figures that show that after the fall of Saddam, Suleimania, Erbil and Hawk had a very big rise in population, far above the average rise in the other cities. And of course you understand that because a lot of Kurds were outside Kurdistan, or they were in different in displaced places. But now of course the situation has reversed. Those areas are stagnant because they already had the population surge into the cities and the areas, whereas the other parts had a migration of a lot of people, Sunnis and other people who were being driven out of their own homes, and they had to go to the safer areas of Kurdistan and Mosul and that sort of area. So that explains why you have this different surges at different times.
Mustafa?
Mr. Jassim, if Mr. Freidon excuse me for this point, really, I want to emphasize two things regarding the Kurdish objection upon the law. First of all, really, they are the Kurdish, the immigrant Kurdish people outside Iraq. They are like the other Iraqis. They were really under very hostile conditions. So we have to treat all the people of Iraq as the same. they have the same condition. They escape the country because one reason or another, really. And this immigration started a long time ago. So you cannot say that the Iraqis, they were immigrant after 2003. They were really leaving the country in a successive waves starting from 1958 till now, under different conditions. This is in one hand. So they are objecting upon that because they need their people as well to have the right for voting. Second, as Mr. Freidoun said, the 2.6% rate of growth in Iraq, this is the common WHO figures. I mean, we should have all the Iraqis to have an annual increment, which is about 2.6, or sometimes they call it 3%. So in any case, this should be applied upon all Iraqi to be in the right way. You shouldn't depend only upon this food ration coupon, which is under the law. We should follow that. If we want to be more precise or accurate, we have to go for the censuses for Iraq, which is really will tell you the truth what's going on. And because of the violence in Iraq, some people moved from here and there. Therefore, you can see the percentage or the growth rate or the increment, in fact, in the population in some cities is different from another, but certainly it is not constant. You cannot imagine that there is no growth rate in any place. So to be in the right way, we have to have really one thing: the census should be adopted and should be applied and be done in Iraq. Second, what we call it, the laws for the party should be issued. Then we should go for the election. This is the right 3 points which we should follow.
Until that happens, Mustafa al-Hiti, we have to deal with reality. And the reality is, Freidoun Hilmi, if we go back to the Kurds, one of the leading members, Mr. Kirkuki, again, he kind of cast doubt about the integrity of the Ministry of Trade. The ration card, which is tied to the voter's card, says there is an enormous number of these ration cards being printed out in the Ministry of Trade and dispersed and given to other governorate at the expense of the 3 Kurdish governorate. Do you buy that explanation?
Well, yes. I mean, everybody's been actually falsifying these ration cards, including the Kurds themselves. They've done that in the past before the fall of Saddam, and they took part in it during the first and second elections. Everything is actually based on falsification, and this is why they do not want to have a population census, which should precede everything else. It is in fact the most important thing to have a population census instead of all these phony elections that they are trying to keep their seats with. The population census would settle everything and finally, but they are not going for that, because as long as they depend on the ration tickets, they can falsify things, they can produce false figures and fraudulent figures, and that's exactly what they've been doing all this time.
Mustafa al-Hiti, let us go to the heart of this issue. There are about 5 million Iraqis languishing in Syria and Jordan. The majority of them, they came out of Baghdad when, during this low-intensity civil war, Baghdad was emptied part of its ethnicity. Those people, they are waiting for the day to go back to Iraq. The majority of them are professionals, liberals, seculars. Some of them are even have the money to stay for so long in these countries. Most probably, if they vote, if they are entitled to vote in this January's election, parties like yours, Iraqi National Movement, will benefit a lot. Most probably they will be voting for you.
Well, look, the Iraqis who left Iraq, really, they are different. It could be the kind of people you have described in one hand, and the others, they are really poor people who are living under really very bad condition. If you have the chance to go to Syria, to some places, they moved even from Damascus to what you call the countryside in order to pay something for the rent and so and so. In Amman, really, they are living in the, what we call it, the west of Amman under a very bad condition. Okay, if we are going to get benefit, we are getting a benefit from the Iraqis, the elite person who are going to return back to build the country, because one of the chaos in the country is because the immigration of the elite people. So who say no for the elite people to come to Iraq? They want really to, develop the country, and you cannot build up and develop the country without the elite people.
Let me ask it to Faridoon Hilmi. It will be damaging to Nouri al-Maliki, wouldn't it, Faridoon Hilmi, if those people are entitled to vote?
Well, certainly they are not going to vote for al-Maliki, and you don't have to be a genius to actually get that point. It's quite important to know also that all the calls for the elite and the intelligentsia to come back to Baghdad is all very rich, because they were driven out. They left Iraq to save their lives. They were driven out. They were dispossessed of everything they had. They were being chased and shot at. They were being killed. We had hundreds of people with their heads chopped off in the mornings. If you remember that period of time when a lot of people were being killed and thrown into the gutters. I mean, we can't forget all that and just tell these people, come back and you'll be okay. And even if they voted, what are they voting for? The same system that is there, the same faces, the same people who are still in the pocket of the occupiers. Why would they vote? Why would somebody like me vote for anybody in the green zone, for example? What has it got to do with me? These guys are not going to do anything for me or for my family or for my country or for anything. So it is absolutely unbelievable that these guys are asking them to go back.
Let us go back to the veto by Tariq al-Hashimi, Mustafa al-Hiti, and most likely that is going to throw the election into chaos. The Election Commission has just halted all its preparations. This critical part of the law is going to go back to Parliament. Is it likely that the percentage will be increased from 5 to 15%? From what you hear about other politicians, your colleagues within Parliament, are they willing to increase the percentage to 15%?
I think we should increase it, and most all the political blocs which I have seen, especially the Kurdistani people, the Iraqis, Iraqi you call it, or now the Iraqi national movement, even people from Islamic Party. I think all those liberal people, they are pushing for that, and I think we can achieve it quite easily. And you should know something which is very important. When I say that the Constitutional Court, they say it is wrong, you cannot put really 5 or 10 or 15%. 15% might be, or at least it could be just near the figure, which is 1 to 100,000. I mean, one seat for 100,000 people, because the number of Iraqis outside Iraq is about or around 4 million. So when you come to this point, then you can be near the right figure, which is now constitutionally accepted for the Iraq, and I think there will be a vote for that. Otherwise, if anybody wants to hinder this, or if they vote against that, they mean, in fact, they don't want the law to be really issued.
Faridoon Hilmi, the more things change in Iraq, the more they stay the same. Perhaps we have seen this movie before. In 2005, the diaspora Iraqis, they voted. They were allowed to vote, and their representative in parliament was supposed to be perhaps 20 or 30, and yet after a while they were reduced to 7. What guarantees do you think the Iraqi parliament and the Iraqi government is going to give the Iraqi in the diaspora that their votes is going to count, and they're going to have something like 40 representatives as opposed to 7 right now?
Well, there is no guarantee, and as you know, during the first elections, the Kurds were not allowed to vote. The Kurds outside the country were not allowed to vote. And recently, when the Kurdish parliament was voted in, 25% of the votes went to the new party called the Change Party. And I said at the time that this is not going to change anything, because it's just going to keep the same people in power, and there's no way that the people in power are going to give way to anybody else. And in fact, at the moment, the 25% that was won by the Change Party, they have not translated these into government positions or government ministries. And this means that they are not really interested in doing anything. All they want is to be members of the parliament, give nice speeches, and have arguments in parliament without actually doing anything specific and concrete. Now, I think the same thing is happening in the Iraqi parliament. It doesn't matter who is elected, what is elected, when they are elected, and how many.
Let me ask Mustafa al-Hiti about that.
And continue to control it.
Mustafa al-Hiti, listening to the rhetoric coming out of Baghdad, especially from the Prime Minister's office, that this election is going to change the face of Iraq. This is the most critical part of Iraqi history. Explain to me, as well as to the viewers, why would this election change dramatically the destiny of Iraq?
Well, I mean, things cannot be just vague. During the last election, which is the governmental or local government election, shows that the people of Iraq really, they want a kind of what you call it liberal national people rather than fanatic religious or sectarian people. And it was very clear when those two what you call it parties from right and left, they were defeated from all the local governments. So this is a science. If you go what we call it for usually the straight line equation, you can see that the Iraq is going really toward a national people. So this is the fact. And sometimes when you go for a survey, you find the people that those religious people were really did bad things either in the parliament or the sectarian people, sorry, to be in the right, use right people,
yes.
right words. They were harming the Iraqis. They were
yes.
using the, what you call it, the religion to cover all their mistakes regarding what they have done to Iraqis. So the Iraqis, they don't want those sectarian people to come
yes.
to Iraq. It means it will dramatically change the face of Iraq, and Iraq will retain what you call it to the global relation in a very clear and nice face.
Tariq Helmi, do you share his optimism?
No, I don't, I'm afraid. And I've been of this view ever since the invasion of Iraq, and things are just not going anywhere near democratic institutions in the country. They're not Democrats at all. They don't understand the meaning of democracy, and they're just playing around and getting a lot of very fat salaries and having a lot of power
yes.
over themselves. But as far as the world is concerned, they have absolutely nothing to do with it.
Tariq Helmi, Mustafa al-Hiti, gentlemen, thank you for being guests on Inside Iraq.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
To watch the show online, please go to our website, aljazeera.net/English. We have reached the end of this show. Join me next week when we take another look inside Iraq. Until then, have a great week.